Welcome to Chapter 2 of the Hiring Chronicles, our independent podcast that's dedicated to digging into the real stories in the world of TA. Although our paychecks will bear the Smart Recruiters logo, our views, opinions, and the classic Davo moments that you will come to love, I promise, are completely unaffiliated with them. So speakers up, it's time to jump in. We hope that you enjoy this chapter just as much as we enjoyed recording it. And don't forget to subscribe.
All right, well, welcome to the Hiring Chronicles. We've got a special guest today in the name of David Brammer. Amy, who's David Brammer?
I think that's for you, Ted.
I'm only joking. I'm doing the intro. So David has spent a lifetime of experience in recruiting and TA. He's worked at the likes of Boots, Stonegate Group, Kingfisher, Ocado, and he's implemented a multitude of systems, anywhere ranging from Workday, Beamery, Connexa, Greenhouse. We're yet to see a Smart Recruiters rollout, but who knows, one day it might be on the agenda. So David, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And it's been a bit of a journey getting here.
It has. It's been a bit of a trek, yeah. But I mean, you know, it's kind of nice to do these things. Most of them I do from my kind of living room. And everybody's kind of getting bored, I would imagine. Not only seeing my face because I'm on everything. I like turn up to the opening of a letter. But also everybody must be getting bored of seeing my paneling on my wall behind me in my kitchen. So it's nice to do one in person and have a reason to get out.
I think Zoom calls are slowly becoming, now from COVID and everything, people are getting a little bit fed up of them.
Zoom fatigue. Yeah. Zoom, Google, you know, Slack, Hangouts, you know, all sorts of stuff. I spend my entire day just talking. Yeah. My wife always says to me, "What do you do for a living?" Because all you do is talk to people. Yeah, that's about it. That's kind of what I do. I just talk.
It's nice to meet people in person as well.
It is.
Yeah. I think you're the polar opposite of our previous guest, who is about 5'3", and David, what are you, 6'7"?
Yeah.
Are you actually 6'7"?
I'm actually well, I used to be 6'8", but I'm 44 now, so I'm starting to shrink a little bit.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm just under 6'8". It depends if I'm trying to impress people or not. If I'm trying to impress people, I'll be like, yeah, I'm 6'8".
I don't know if height is an impressive thing, but it's definitely impressive compared to us.
It depends on the context.
Yeah.
Depends, in a nightclub, not a bad thing. You know, at a gig, terrible thing. No one wants to stand behind you, you know.
So today we've invited you on. You have, like I said at the beginning, you've been there, done it.
Yeah.
You've probably seen and experienced everything worth knowing about in recruiting. And when we did our sort of pre-call, you said, you know, there's several things that you've changed about what your focus is since leaving Ocado and the work that you're now doing. And you had a couple of topics that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you want to begin today. For me, I really like hearing the person's background first of all. So it'd be great to know a little bit more about who you are.
Okay, I can do that. So I'm originally from Derbyshire, and I started my career in recruitment in Nottingham. I moved to Nottingham when I was about 21. And I started, like a lot of recruiters do, I kind of fell into it. No one ever goes to a kind of a careers counselor and says, while they're at school, you know, I really want to be a recruiter, right?
Yeah, when you're like deciding your GCSEs, you don't be like, do you know what? I want to be a recruiter.
Yeah. Like I'm going to do drama because I want the drama that comes with recruitment. No, it wasn't. It was kind of, I fell into it. I was a commodities broker straight out of uni, and then decided that wasn't for me. And so I kind of jumped into recruitment. And it was one of those true old school kind of agencies that I first joined, right? Where you're on call 24/7 and you've got a mobile and a Ford Mondeo. And this was like pre-systems as well, right? So we didn't even have a system at the time. So I had a filing cabinet that I used to kind of carry around in an Adidas bag. And it had like class 1 drivers, class 2 drivers, you know, high ab specialists and that kind of stuff. You used to get phone calls at like 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, David, you can save my life. Have you got a class 1 driver? Like, no. Same guy call an hour later at 3. You got anybody? No. 4 o'clock. Can you help me out? Like
at 2 in the morning?
Oh yeah. 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. By the 5th call at 6 a.m, my wife was like, if you pick up that phone, you can leave. I was like, okay. So I did a couple of years in like what you would call industrial to start out with. And then I moved to computer people. Happiest days of my entire career. Loved it. I was supplying contractors, IT contractors into Ministry of Defence through Serco at the DSTL. Ran a fantastic book of contractors there for like 4 or 5 years. And then we lost that contract, unfortunately, because that's how the bid process kind of works with different agencies and master vendors and stuff. And so I then decided to go in-house. Worked at the time, it was really hard to go from agency to in-house. So I had to take like a 6-month contract. I worked for a bank called First Data. I was setting up fraud centres for Coots Bank and Barclaycard and stuff up in Scotland. So I was flying each week from East Midlands Airport up to Glasgow, which was a right laugh. So I did that for 6 months.
What are you saying about Glasgow?
I loved Glasgow. It's amazing. Not such a great commute from Derbyshire or Nottinghamshire, but a great place. And then after that 6-month stint, I went into Eon, started managing all their MSPs, RPOs, 1,600 temps a day, 500 contractors. And I was doing all that kind of stuff for them in-house. Moved from there to Boots after Boots had acquired Don and Aitchison. So I'd gone in there for a mergers and acquisitions type thing, bringing the two teams and functions and systems and everything together, which was really cool. Boots then gave me all of clinical. So I had Boots Hearing Care, Boots Optometrist, Boots Pharmacy. Built that out. Really enjoyed that. We won loads of awards and stuff, which was brilliant. And then actually I realised that there weren't that many opportunities in Nottingham, right? You can either work for like Boots or Rolls-Royce, or you can work for like Capital One or something, but you can't really escalate your career there. And I got a phone call about going to work for TK Maxx, who were based in Watford, and my wife was from Hertfordshire, so we relocated. Boots was like the kind of the narrative behind it is Boots was UK and Ireland. TK Maxx gave me the opportunity to move into Europe and European kind of resourcing and stuff. When I got there was like 8 people in TA. When I left, there was like 38. So we built that out into a big thing. And then I followed one of the HR directors from TK Maxx to Kingfisher Group. That gave me a global remit. All of a sudden I'm dealing with like Russia, China, just random, huge places. And a couple of years later, so 2020, start of the pandemic, I took voluntary redundancy by choice 2 months before the pandemic. Started a new role. Yeah, smooth, right? Started a new role at Stonegate Company, which is a pub company. They own like half of Soho, 17,000 pubs, bars, clubs, whatever, across the UK. And on the day I started, in March 2020, my first meeting in the SLT, I was one of the top 17 in the business. So I went into this meeting for the top 17. And my first meeting on my first day, they said, close the pubs. Boris has closed the pubs. Within 4 days, I was on furlough for 6 months. 6 months later, I was made redundant. Then I did the 1-year gig with Mind Gym, which was amazing. Never worked for a small company before. It was like 300 people. Got to scale it to 600. Massive tech innovation, moving forward with this huge online product, which was brilliant. Get to work with someone like Octavius Black, who obviously, if you know Octavius, is a right character. He's eccentric but wonderful, and I loved him dearly. He could never call me David. He always had to use my full name, David Bremer. Good morning, David Bremer. I think he got his MBE or OBE this year, I forget which. But got some exposure to working with the board there, and they had like Neds like Sir Trevor Phillips and people like that were just really influential and really interesting. And then Ocado came up, and I got the phone call about Ocado. Would you like to come have a chat with us? 7 or 8 interviews later with CEOs and CFOs and COOs.
Wow, that's a lot of interviews.
Yeah, when you kind of get into a C-suite -1 role, where you're directly reporting into the C-suite, there are many, many more interviews, but they're not really interviews. They're more kind of conversations, right? They're kind of like us sat here now, shooting the breeze a bit. And they were going through this huge kind of transformation, and it was really interesting. I got to work for an amazing CPO in Claire Ainscoe, who is a wonderful, wonderful leader and a brilliant person. But 15 months later, we hit a lot of hiring targets. Hiring slowed down at the start of this year. Unfortunately, me and a great deal of my team took redundancy. Since then, I've been doing some contracting. So currently working for Carafi on site at Kantar Public, who went separate from Kantar Group last year, and doing some work with them, which is cool. And a lot of this.
Talking.
Talking. Yeah, a lot of this and a lot of posting on LinkedIn, which is largely centered around the TA market and how difficult it's been and how many people have been struggling to find jobs and stuff. So been working a bit with IHR and their kind of community to try and help people back into opportunities and work and stuff, which has been cool. But yeah, that's it.
What draws you to, because obviously in most of your roles that you've been in, you've been on like transformation, you've implemented lots of different tech. What draws you to that world around technology and tech?
I think when you take any kind of job, there's always three things, right? There's three boxes that you want to tick, and you need to tick two of them as a minimum, right? So the first is around package and salary and stuff, right? It's got to work for you. It's got to pay the bills. Second is around the company and their values and what they're about, and whether you, on a values-based level or whatever, whether you vibrate at the same kind of frequency, and you get on with it and you're into it, right? Because I once got a phone call about one of those kind of payday loan companies. They were going to pay me an absolute fortune, but I was like, no, on an ethical grounds, I could never consider it. So that's about the company. And then the third element is always about the challenge. And that's the most important one for me. I'm not a mercenary, so I won't just go to the highest bidder, irrespective of the company and the challenge. I'm not just about the money, I don't care. But I am all about the challenge, almost to the point sometimes where I would kind of almost sod the money, sod whoever the company is. I'm really interested in the work. So I tend to follow the work. And it just so happens that the work that's interesting happens to be super complex. So with Kingfisher, when I followed Steve to Kingfisher from TK Maxx, they had like 6 brands in 9 countries, trying to bring all of their TA functions into one central function of Kingfisher.
And they look after like B&Q and
Screwfix are the UK brands. Yeah. And then, they've got like Castorama, Brico Depot, Koshtas, Praktika. They've got all these different brands on the continent, right? In Europe. And while, like I said before, kind of when I first joined them, they were in Russia and different places. And then they've got huge buying offices and logistics kind of considerations out in Asia and APAC. So that was kind of the draw with that one. With Boots, the draw was it was a M&A, right? It was a merger and an acquisition of the Don and Aitchison brand. And it was just interesting. They'd offered me 2 or 3 jobs before that. Will you come and do our head office hiring? Will you come and do this? No, it's boring. Why would I rob Peter to pay Paul and move from Eon, where I'm quite happy working with a bunch of mates that I really love and I'm still in touch with and texting, on a WhatsApp basis every other day? Why would I leave that to go and do the same thing? So when I went to Boots, it was because of that exciting opportunity. With Kingfisher also, it was a systems challenge, right? So some of the countries, some of the brands didn't have an ATS at all. So for me to kind of roll out, at the time was iSIMS, for me to roll out iSIMS for that kind of company and incrementally do it by first is UK, then it's Romania, then it's France, then it's, do you know what I mean? It was kind of interesting. And we chose iSIMS at the time because it was unlike a kind of a huge enterprise platform like a SuccessFactors or Connexa, Brassring, that kind of thing, or a Taleo. It was really small and really easy to configure. And they were brass tacks, right? It was basics.
Yeah.
So just being able to kind of say lift, shift, drop, in different languages for a bunch of different countries was a nice, interesting challenge. And I love the Kingfisher team as well. They were amazing, And I've brought people along with me, right? So Steph McGinty, who's now head of recruitment at Kingfisher, actually used to be my recruitment administrator at TK Maxx. I then made her a recruiter. She then followed me after being a recruiter. She then followed me to Kingfisher and is now head of TA there. So there's a handful of kind of instances like that where you get to kind of take people with you, and I love that.
It's an interesting perspective, actually, because there's a whole thing, obviously, in TA at the moment of do we advertise salaries on job adverts and all of that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because I think if you start doing that, then a lot of people will have the bias and they'll go straight to, no, not enough money, I'm not going to apply. Whereas it's like you say, it's not all about the money. It's the values. Is the job going to challenge you? Can you see a future?
But people don't list that though, do they?
No.
Like you're saying that you like the challenge.
Yeah.
But when do you find that out? Are you asking that in the interview, like what systems have you got and what are you trying to achieve? When does it become apparent?
It's typically when the recruiter first calls you, right? So the majority of the jobs that I've had, with the exception maybe of Kingfisher and a couple of others, have been where an exec recruiter has kind of called you up, right? So I'm in a process right now for one through Hydrick and Struggles. And they'll kind of call you and they'll say, we've got this company, we think it'd be interesting for you. You then get an NDA through, you sign the NDA because obviously you can't then talk about that type of stuff. And they'll say, here's the company. And you go, okay, maybe so, or, oh, that's exciting, you know, just by the name or the brand of a company.
Yeah.
If you look at my CV, I followed a lot of brands.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that resonates with people. But when they kind of give you the detail of here's the challenge, that's where the hook is for me. It's not like, right, well, it's a 200 grand basic or it's 150 grand basic or whatever. Because actually, to your point, right, there's a huge disparity right now. I can get a phone call or have someone message me about a head of recruitment job that's for a hotel group that's 50 grand, right?
Yeah.
And I've had recruitment administrators who were paid 50 grand, but I've also had really good recruiters who've been paid 50 grand, but never a head of TA. But then there are jobs out there in the city, in the banks, in Canary Wharf, where someone calls you and says, I've got a manager job. And you go, yeah, I don't think that's going to be quite at the right level. And they're like, well, so the basic's 225,000. You're like, wow. But that's the banking institutions, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't really worked in banking now for like 20 years. But I think for me personally, that challenge is always clear and evident or it's not. So I'm talking to a startup. Well, they're not a startup. They're kind of Series B at the minute. And for me, the interesting or the challenge with that one is it's not just a purist kind of TA role. Yes, they need to grow. Yes, they need to do all that stuff. But they also want someone who can come in and do the talent stuff, right? And do the L&D stuff and all that kind of thing. And some more generalist kind of HR, which has never really appealed to me, honestly. But with this company, it kind of does. And it's largely because of their mission.
Right.
Because they're focused quite heavily on environmental stuff.
Okay.
You know,
so there's a bigger picture that.
yeah, big
working
picture.
towards.
Yeah, on those three, does it quite tick the salary box? No, not quite. But on a values and a business basis, hell yeah, it's really interesting. Whether it works out or not, I don't know. We'll see. But I'm one of those people that kind of believes that in fate a lot. So I kind of believe that I'm in this room now because I'm meant to be.
You are meant to
You
be.
are meant
I
We
am
booked
meant-
you.
You booked me, right? So I'm in this room.
We've come after you, David. That's why.
Yeah, you sort me out. And I'm here because I said, yeah, I kind of put a post up on LinkedIn like
Yeah.
a week ago or so, just saying this is the year of saying yes. If
Yeah.
someone asked me to do something, instead of me just routinely going, oh, sorry, I'm booked on that date, which is my typical go-to, and apologies to anybody who's kind of seen this or is listening to this. And kind of goes,
We got him first.
I got one of those off David the other week. Was he actually blagging me?
I feel honoured that you've said yes now.
Well, yeah, he's got to now. He said it. So.
I kind of feel like since the start of the year, obviously I took redundancy. I was a free agent from kind of April, but I've been working since May. Not that it's on my LinkedIn profile because it's not really something of note that I'm massively out there sharing. I started putting out the content. It got some interest. The content and the interest then started generating different opportunities, right? So like I said to you before we kind of came online, this is my third podcast in like a week. And I've got a couple more lined up in a month's time and I'm judging at awards and I'm doing different things. And I think there's always loads of opportunities out there. I don't want to kind of get myself the reputation of being the guy that is everywhere, right? Because that's equally not cool. But I kind of felt like, sod it, this can just be the year of yes. And I'll say yes to everything and I'll do it and we'll see what I like and what I don't like. And then obviously I can kind of adjust for next year. Do you know what I mean?
And I get where you're coming from. And the more you say yes, I think it dilutes your value a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
And there's
No,
that
you're right.
risk.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
But on the same token, please don't leave us.
I'm not going anywhere. No, that's fine.
But like you, I think for someone like yourself, without bigging you up too much, you've got a great background, great career. The resume speaks for itself. You've got approaches coming towards you and
Yes.
being directed your way. Not everybody's got that, and I see a lot on LinkedIn. The TA community are suffering.
Yes, they
People going through redundancies. TA units are being stripped back, maybe being merged into IT.
Yeah.
From a branding perspective, you've talked to me about building a brand,
A personal brand.
personal brand. So give us some insight into how you've gone about that, because your presence, I wouldn't say you're everywhere, but when I see a feed, I see your posts go on there and you've got a lot of following on there, a lot of traction. Your posts are grabbing attention, giving you that brand. So talk us through how you go about building that.
So I think I didn't, first of all, I didn't start posting to get attention, if you know what I mean. It kind of happened organically and I'm quite happy with that. But I think I started posting because I had the time and I had the opportunity and I had something to say.
Yeah.
Right. And my wife will also confirm I've always got something to
You've
say.
got an opinion.
Yeah, I've got an opinion, right? So I was seeing a lot of really kind of bad practice. And I think I started sharing a lot of that type of stuff. The first post might have been about ghosting or something like that, right? And then there was a post I put out that got like 70,000 views or something within 3 or 4 days. And it was a personal post. I put it out, and it kind of started by saying, my dad only gave me one piece of advice because he'd worked in retail for his whole career, right? As have I, largely for a lot of mine. And he said the one constant in retail is change. And I kind of put that as the first kind of line. And it just got this ridiculous kind of response and hundreds of different kind of interactions and comments and different stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I put one up about ghosting, and then I put one up about, why is there this invisible wall, almost like a Berlin type wall between agency recruiters and, the in-house guys. And I have a theory about that, right? A lot of the in-house guys who have a bit of a stick up their backside about working with recruiters are the people who tried to be recruiters and didn't perhaps make quite such a success of it, or were in agency and had a really terrible experience with being in one of the worst agencies where the environment wasn't great and everybody was a bit, because it was very laddie, right? Even back in the day when I was there, it was quite laddie. It wasn't unheard of for people to be sat at their desk, drinking a beer on a Friday afternoon and smoking a cigarette, right?
Yeah.
This is early 2000s. It's not quite the 80s or 90s where that was absolutely standard practice on a Tuesday at 11. But it's like, I think I just put these posts out, and I've decided to start doing it quite regularly, and I noticed some themes, right? So if I put something out on like a Tuesday morning, people would have a better response to it. But it was also about consistency, right? So I was like, well, I've got nothing to do with my day, because I'm literally sat at home twiddling my thumbs. My kid's at school, my wife's working in the next room. I can either watch Bargain Hunt, right? Or I can put in a couple of applications. Largely, I'm going to get ghosted or auto-rejected for. I did it twice, right? This year, when I got made redundant, I made 2 applications. I was rejected for both of them within an hour. Both jobs, which arguably, without sounding conceited, I could have done in my sleep. And within an hour, I was rejected automatically almost. And I put a post up about that. And then I put a post up about, how lots of people are out of work and this, that, and the other. And it just kind of gradually built a bit of momentum. But there's a constant theme with my stuff. And it's always about the TA community. And it's about helping people ideally and whatever else. But it was never by design. It was just, at the time, I had the opportunity and I had something to say. So I just did it. And it does seem to have gained a little bit of traction. I'm not at like Andrew McCaskill, level of 1 million views on one of his posts. When I was chatting with him the other week, he was like, I had a post that got 1 million views on LinkedIn.
What did he post about?
I don't even know. I didn't ask. I didn't want to sound like a fanboy.
But I think your posts are like, you see so many posts on LinkedIn, and it's just the same stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everyone's talking about this, and it's the same thing. Whereas yours is almost like you're saying what people are thinking.
Yeah, I'm prepared to say what people are.
You're happy to be open, and like you
Yeah.
say, like these 2 jobs that I've applied to, I could do them with my eyes closed, but because of you're just being very open, which I don't think is a common thing that you see on LinkedIn. I think people are afraid of being.
Yeah, but you got to think about where LinkedIn derived from.
Yeah.
That whole culture of like open, honest, that doesn't derive from LinkedIn. LinkedIn's all about this sort of corporate. I think it's struggling. It needs to reinvent itself a little bit from that perspective, because we do want to hit. Yeah, it's just not real.
It's so one dimensional. I think everybody's facing the same challenges with like D&I, for example, right? 6-7 years ago, D&I, it wasn't like an old wooden ship like Ron Burgundy said in Anchorman, right? But it wasn't in the conscious necessarily as much as it is today.
No.
I think that's a really positive thing.
Yeah.
But what it has done is it's spawned 1,000 influencers who all know absolutely everything about D&I overnight.
Yeah.
Just like that. It's like when ChatGPT launched, all of a sudden everybody on LinkedIn is like an AI expert. Like, really?
You would
Are you though?
Literally, there were so many posts about
Yeah.
it within
Yeah.
24 hours.
Within
wasn't there?
24 hours, it's like, how can you get the best out of ChatGPT? Like, really? It launched like 3 days ago. How have you even learned this, right? And I didn't want to jump on the bandwagon of that type of stuff. So I figured, well, what can I talk about? And the thing I can talk about is TA, because I know it and I've lived it for 20 odd years. But also I can do it probably from a bit more of a human angle, where I'm prepared to word it and say my piece, but still in a respectful way, but kind of get my point across.
Without putting it into ChatGPT to write it for you.
Yeah.
So we
It's
can
bizarre.
confirm you don't use ChatGPT.
I do not use
obviously.
ChatGPT. I don't know if they could use my vernacular. I don't. You could probably train it to, right?
Yeah, I
it
think
would
so.
probably be able to write something in my
Yeah.
language. People always moan at me. They're like, "Why do you put so many dots after things that you write?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not a scholar, and I can't say that I'm a." My current boss is, read English at Cambridge and is incredibly bright and loves reading and stuff. I've read about 5 books my entire life. I just have a way of saying things that for the minute at least seems to resonate with people, and I quite like that. But if it all went away tomorrow, I'd be cool with that too.
I think people are trying to use it, because I've seen the guys at Udder. They do like a blog that you might follow, and they're using ChatGPT now to write the blog in their tone of voice.
Wow.
And consolidate all of these HR articles into one thread, and bring like a summary from ChatGPT about what they are, all in the tone of voice that the guys at Udder use to talk in. So there's about 7,000 subscribers on their list, which
It's crazy.
I looked at it. I was
Yeah.
like, that's insane. So-
Yeah, I mean, I'm for saying that I've held some quite big corporate jobs. I'm not particularly corporate. And
Yeah.
that's almost like a kind of a credo, if you know what I mean. When I go to any kind of interviews and stuff, I always say, look, my leadership style, people tend to get on board with it from a kind of a team level, right? But some leaders might not quite like it that much, because I'll hold up a mirror to people and kind of go, you're complaining that our hiring time is 82 days to make a hire, but here's some stats that say that's down to hiring manager feedback that takes 3 weeks in between interviews, and trying to get into your diary is actually what's causing the problem. So actually our hiring time is 28 days, and then the rest of it is you. And a lot of companies aren't really comfortable having someone who's prepared to kind of hang up a mirror almost and hold other people to account, because I think recruitment is an interesting one. It's the only department in any business where everybody believes they can do your job better than you can. Right?
So true.
It is, right? So if I was to say to a CFO at a company that I was working for, you know what, don't like the job that my finance partner's doing, so I'm just going to hire my own accountant, and they're just going to come in, they're just going to do my accounts for me. That wouldn't be acceptable, right? But it's absolutely okay for a hiring manager instead to go, yeah, not really enamored by the internal team, so I've just engaged this agency. I've got these 8 CVs.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
GDPR compliant, by the way, because they just sent them to me on my email, and I printed them off, and I've just left them in a random room. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I don't think that there's necessarily enough people out there who are prepared to have the difficult conversations.
Why?
I don't know. I think one of the phrases that I kind of often reflect back on, it was a friend of mine actually that said this phrase to me, and it really resonated. And she actually said to me, she said, what you've got to do when you move into senior leadership is you've got to get more comfortable being uncomfortable. And I was like, it's a bit profound. But then actually it made so much sense, because you're the one, when you're at the top of the tree, you've got to have really uncomfortable conversations with people and say things that they maybe don't want to hear. And you've got to hear things from them that you don't want to hear about you and your leadership style, but you've got to take it, right? And you've got to get more comfortable being uncomfortable. And also what you find is the further up the tree you get as well, you don't make as many friends, right? And that's a really bizarre thing to say, but it really is important. So if I think back to either TK Maxx or Boots or Computer People, where I was, or Eon, I've still got groups of friends from those companies when I was still in kind of lower level or middle level management, where, you would have that camaraderie and you'd go out for beers on a Thursday night in Old Street, or you do whatever, right? That stops when you become the TA director. and you're rubbing shoulders with other types of people, not in a grandiose way by any stretch, right? But people stop treating you the same way. I'm the same bloke now that I was in many ways 15 years ago. In other ways, I've learned to remove some filters or to add some filters, right? Greg Hill, who's a really good mate of mine, who's the head of TA at Interflora, he always used to say to me, "You've just got no filter." He said, "Everything that you think just spews out your mouth, and then you think about it afterwards."
You're made for a podcast then.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I can talk about anything, but he's absolutely right. And you learn to apply those filters over the years, and the further up the tree you get, the less people feel comfortable around you. I feel really uncomfortable if someone doesn't feel comfortable with me because of my level or status within a company, if you know what I mean. I hate that.
And do you think it is that? Like, it is because you're a TA director?
Because
like, it's
the
that
hierarchy.
title.
Yeah.
It's the title that you're like, oh, I
And
can't
it's
go and have a
palpable.
beer with him.
Yeah.
Or
No, it's super noticeable. Like,
Yeah.
if I have, let's say I had a team of heads of that worked beneath me, and then they had managers, and that manager had seniors, and then they had recruiters, and the recruiters had administrators. You can be talking 5-6 different levels of people, and you can literally kind of palpably feel and see the difference in how people talk to you.
yeah.
Do you think you can ever alleviate that, change it?
I mean, I've tried a few times, but I think in the end, because there's so many difficult decisions to make, if you do kind of get to that TA director type level, it's almost better not to have too much of a personal involvement, because, you know, like at the start of the year where I'm having to have conversations with 30, 40 people about making them redundant, it's really hard to do that. It's much harder for me. It's harder for them if we're friends, right? And we get on a really kind of close level. I don't know if I would have been able to do that with other people that I'd had a really close connection with in the past. But yeah, I do think the further up the tree you get, the lonelier it gets. 100%.
Do you need a hug, David?
No, I'm all right. I'm okay. Honestly, I'm crying on the inside.
He's had a long journey and he's got no friends.
It's been a long journey. I've got no friends. Yeah. But I think there's just a lot of truth to it, you know. And I think if I cast my mind back to the jobs that I enjoyed the most, right, like TK Maxx was incredible. I loved
Why?
it.
What was so
The
good about
culture,
TK Maxx?
the culture at TJX companies is 10 times that of any culture I've experienced in any other company.
How? What do they do?
They always kind of said, like, famously, well, first of all, when you first start in a managerial role there, right, they kind of go, 3 months, you can't touch anything. I was like, what? And they were like, 3 months, you can't touch anything. Don't want you to look at it, don't want you to break it, don't want you to touch it. Figure out why it is how it is before you make assumptions. And they were dead right, because you kind of walk through the door and you go, oh my God, that process needs fixing. I'm going to look like the Messiah because I've come in and I've spotted something straight away that's going to save you a ton of cash and time. But then 3 months later, you realize why it works like that. And you go, actually, I'm not going to touch that. It might be a heritage way of doing things, or, bygones, whatever. But you realize why it works for that company. And they really nourish and cherish the kind of the culture of the people there. They always say, you learn more in 10-minute chat at the water fountain or at the coffee, machine than you do in 100 meetings. And they were right. And the truth of it was, I think I was just surrounded by really nice people. Their credo for hiring, the first senior leadership meeting that I went to, a guy called Ernie, who was like the chief executive officer at the time over in the States, came over to Watford to our head office. And he goes, I'd like to just give you 3 words when you're thinking about hiring people. I was like, sweet. He goes, hire nice people. Seriously, if that's not the best 3-word hiring credo there has ever been. And he was dead right, because you did not. I mean, like maybe 1 in 50, right? You'd meet someone who you just didn't click with and you'd be like, oof, But that company, for some reason, nails culture. And I loved working there. And I built a great little group of friends and whatever else. And it was a shame to leave in the end. But I would have always gone back there in a heartbeat, just because the culture of the business is just amazing. TK Maxx and HomeSense.
I think culture is such a big... I remember being like...
Big deal.
My first kind of role as a recruiter at Vodafone, you make like your core friends, and you'd go out on nights out, and it's just like that environment. But then when you come back in, it's everyone's just I don't know. It feels very wholesome.
You go to like I'll tell you what, right? I'm a big fan of the awards. I am a big fan of the awards, largely because I like to dust down the velvet jacket and whatever, and wear a nice big pompous kind of bow tie. But you go to a RAD Awards or a Recruiter Awards with your team, and you have a good night, and you're bonded. You've got enough stories. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the stories that you used to build on nights out where you were like, oh my God, do you remember this? Oh, do you remember when blah, blah, blah fell over in the chip shop? That kind of stuff, right? And that's the stuff that stops when you get into the senior leadership stuff, because you kind of go, right, 11 o'clock, and you disappear. And I've got this thing, one company, they literally called me the ghost, because at 10 o'clock, I would go, oh, I'm just nipping to the bathroom, and I wouldn't be nipping to the bathroom.
Oh, we have a boss
I would
like
just go
that.
home.
Yeah, we have a boss like that will just he'll just be like, oh, I'm just gonna go to the bathroom, and then that's it. You won't see him again for the whole night.
Yeah.
So it's a cool move.
But that was strategic though, right? Because there are levels of David, and level 5 of David after like lots of drinks on a dance floor, that's an entirely different David to level 1 David in a meeting, with the CPO and whatever else.
I feel like we need to see level 5.
I don't know if we'll ever get there.
No one's seen level 5 David in many a year, and for very, very, very good reason. Last time level 5 David came out, and it was quite embarrassing. So I don't do that really anymore. And I think that's the shame, because there's almost an authenticity about you that kind of disappears and falls by the wayside as you kind of get through the ranks.
Yeah.
And that's a massive shame, because I think the people who I worked with at TK Maxx or at Boots or at Eon, where some of my best mates are still there, had an authentic experience of me on a personal level. Because I think there's always business, there's always personal. I think you can get on with someone from a business point of view and actually have very little respect for them as a person, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But I think less of the personal comes out, the more you kind of progress in your career. And I think that's a shame, but it's just a reality. And that comes out, I think, in the writing when I put stuff on LinkedIn.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's me. Yeah. And it's really down to earth. And I just say things how I think them. I might not quite curse as much as I normally do. Anyone who knows, Greg, when we were at Eon, used to call me Toretto, because I swear a lot. And I do that still around people I feel super kind of comfortable with, and if they do that, then that's great.
He's not sworn yet.
I haven't done it yet. I have a bit of a policy on podcasts and stuff not to do it.
Oh, we're okay. We're not censoring. It's not for the kids.
Yeah, I'm not just going to start throwing out F-bombs. That's fine.
Okay.
Do you think, though, for somebody that is, I guess, maybe been made redundant or whatever, and they're looking for a new vacancy, that building your brand and starting from LinkedIn is the way to go? Because obviously there's so many social platforms now, like TikTok, Instagram. Yeah. There's so many, do you start building your brand from LinkedIn? Is that a good place?
I mean, I would never encourage people to start thinking about it as building their personal brand.
Okay.
I would say that it is about being present. So I shared a job 3 days ago. I was doing a favour for a mate.
Just the 85k salary one.
That's the one, yeah. So it's nice
I've not applied.
Nice that someone noticed, right? So I put up a post for a friend. He gave me a ring a couple of days ago, lunchtime. He says, look, I need someone. We're doing this MSP project, and we've got to do this and we've got to do that. I need a recruitment manager, roughly about 85 grand, occasional travel, London, Yorkshire, otherwise remote. I put up a post and said, inbox me if you're interested. And within 4 hours, I had to put a note on that post saying, this position is now filled, because I'd had literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people email me. And I went back to every single one, because I hate getting ghosted. I hate it. If you're going to put something out there, you have to at least go back to everyone, right? And comment and say, look, thank you, but I think there's more suitable people, or reach out to this person because they're the hiring manager, whatever. But I had to take it down within 4 hours, because it just went mental. And I think that is very telling of the TA market at the minute, because there's a lot of people that are applying for stuff, seeing that type of content, applying for it, but they're going up against 300 or 400 other people. The difference for me was when I started posting, And I've had, since March, I think, since maybe March, I've had like 500,000 views on my stuff. That changed everything. So me having my open to work banner on my picture on LinkedIn, step one. Step two, start posting some stuff about the fact that you're available, right? And be present and comment on other people's stuff and like other people's stuff and congratulate people when they land a job, right? There's no place in business for sour grapes, right? If someone else gets a job that you maybe were interested in, you just have to congratulate them and say, well, best person won, right? But it's not so much about personal brand for me as it is just about being present. 80% of the jobs, and I've shared this on a different one of my posts, 80% of the jobs that have come to me since I got made redundant came to me via my content. Someone always writes, I saw your post this morning, or I saw your post yesterday, really like that, thank you, I needed to hear it. I've heard about this job at blah, blah, blah. I can give you an introduction if you like. And the stuff isn't coming to me through agencies at all. The agencies, for me personally at least, I'm not saying this on behalf of the industry, I don't speak on behalf of the industry, but the agencies have not had the work. TA is so, I guess it's still very much in demand, but for every job, there's 300-400 people, right? So the agencies are a bit obsolete at the minute in this market, and everybody knows someone who knows someone, and everything's coming through referrals. And that just resonated with me a lot. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to start posting and I'll see what it does. And literally, I was getting 3-4 different opportunities a week. I was then catching up with other people who I knew who'd been made redundant at similar times. They were like, I've had 2 leads in a month. I've had 1 lead in a month. I've heard nothing in 3 months. I'm pulling my hair out. You know, there's different people that are putting posts up saying that they're suicidal, right? Because they've been out of work now for 4 or 5 months and they can't afford it. Now,
It's meant to be a light-hearted podcast, Dave.
I know, sorry.
Getting a bit deep now.
Sorry, but like, I think you just kind of have to keep some perspective on it, right? Because in between leaving Stonegate and Mind Gym, there was like 3 months. And I'd had a conversation, no word of a lie, I'd had a conversation with Tesco about going and driving for them 2 days before I got Mind Gym. Because I was just like, I'm pulling my hair out, I'm bored. You know, it's not obviously not going to pay the bills, but it's going to help a little bit, right?
Something to do.
Yeah,
and
sod it. I'm just going to go and take the evening shift for Tesco and I'm going to start delivering people's groceries in my area and I don't care. I don't give a shit. I'll do it. And 2 days later, Mind Gym kind of came up. And that was more out of boredom and just wanting to feel still like I was contributing and doing stuff.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the personal branding bit, be present. I spoke to a friend of mine 2 weeks ago, got made redundant, same time as me, 4 months ago. Hasn't done a day's work since. I was like, you haven't even got your open to work banner on. He was like, oh no, I meant to put it on. I'm like, put it on. Like, don't be too proud, right? You won't be too proud in another 2 months where all your, redundancy money's gone and then you've got to find some cash from somewhere, right? And you're asking your mum and dad for a loan or something. I was like, put the goddamn open to work sign on. And also, you haven't posted in 4 months. And when you did, it was some bullshit about like, oh, I had a lovely ice cream this afternoon. Like, do you know what I mean?
Point number 1, don't post about ice cream.
Don't post
No
about
ice
ice cream. I mean, yeah, I think, look, I'm not one of those people that says don't put personal stuff on LinkedIn. I like it if people put, you'll occasionally see a wedding photo or, oh, I'm pleased to say I'm now a dad or I'm a mom or whatever. I'm dead proud of myself. I love that and I'll give it a love heart emoji or whatever. But like, if it's just like, oh, I went for a coffee this morning, look at this cake, like, take it to Facebook. Do you know what I mean? Like, the people that know you and love you might give a shit about the fact that you've just eaten a nice bit of Battenberg. I don't care. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's limits.
And are you following like certain ways of, because like your posts aren't short, they vary in size.
Yeah,
but
usually about 5 paragraphs. Yeah.
Yeah, like you have fairly long, almost like an anecdotal story, and then you're using particular hashtags, stuff like that. Give us some tips if we're...
I use the same 5 hashtags on pretty much everything that I post because I'm not posting for everyone. I'm posting for the TA community because that's what I'm interested in. That's what I do. That's where I operate, right? So I'm not posting about kind of mental health awareness week and that kind of stuff. I will like other people's posts about that. I might even share them, but I don't know enough and I'm not educated and I'm not really affected by that personally. So it doesn't feel like it would be authentic for me to do that. So I post about TA stuff. I always use talent acquisition as one of my hashtags, or recruiter or recruitment or talent or whatever, those same 5 typically hashtags. But I always start all of my posts typically with a question. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, right? But there is something in the LinkedIn algorithm that if you start a post with a question, it reaches more people. Bizarre.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because it engages.
It's more engaging. It's asking
rather
for,
than...
Yeah, it's asking for it in a way, I guess.
Okay.
But like, I will always start with a question. And that question will pop into my head. And some of the posts that I've really thought about and I've gone, oh, that's a killer, I'll put up and it'll get like 4,000 views. I'll be like, what's that? And other stuff, I'll be sat in my garden and go, oh, that's a good one. And I'll post it. It'd take 2 minutes. It'd be like 3 lines and it'll get like 27 or 50,000 views. And you're like, there's no science behind this at all. It's just whether it resonates with people or not. And just because I'm thinking about something, it doesn't mean that everybody likes it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you mentioned like the cadence, being present.
Yeah, I tend to post twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's not like I'm planning what those posts are. I just kind of go, right, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I should write something really. And if there's something in my head, I'll write it. If not, then I might not. Some of it might be personal. The personal stuff tends to get many more views, if you know what I mean. Like, if you're telling a story from your perspective.
Yeah.
So like if you're kind of saying, oh, I went for this job the other day and this happened and blah, 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 that'll get loads of buy-in because it's a story and people are kind of interested in that type of stuff. Not because they're nosy, but like because it kind of hooks you in a little bit. But if you then start writing a really deep and meaningful about employer brand, do you know what I mean? Like some people are going to be super into it and other people are just going to be like, oh, no, dry, thank you, no.
Do you think it makes a difference though for someone who's like applying for lots of different jobs and they're like if you're putting yourself in the shoes of someone that's actually applying for a role, they're applying but they're being active on LinkedIn and they're posting and then I don't know, you as the HR or hiring manager comes and looks at their LinkedIn profile. Yeah. Do you think you kind of take that into account of, oh, actually, you know, they're putting up good content, their posts, like, would you consider that as
their
part
posts
of...
and stuff? No, I mean, I've not been in a hiring manager position for a little while, right? I mean, I tend to hire people out of my network that I know, if you know what I mean. So if I'm looking for like a head of recruitment marketing to come and work in my team, I already know 10 of them. And they're always the same 5 or 10 people that I'll go to and say, you need to come here, this is great, you're going to love it. Or I'll be like, who do you know?
Yeah.
Because it would be more outbound than that. I tend not to get too much inbound. If I have opportunities in my team, I almost make a point of kind of going for referrals first for all the stats and stuff that people give you, right? And I know that 82.765% of stats are made up on the spot, right? But I think the stats that most companies have are that 60-70% of referrals stay longer than non-referred employees, which is kind of pertinent, right?
Okay.
So I like to keep things within my network. So I don't often post if I have something in my team unless it's very specific or, do you know what I mean? Like if I was looking for someone to come in and do some project work or something. But no, it doesn't make a difference if someone's been putting up content or not. That wouldn't make any odds as to whether I would hire them or not, but it would put them in my conscious, and in my psyche if I saw constantly that they were posting. So I shared that vacancy a couple of days ago, the 85K, and this one guy kind of pops up straight away and goes, I'm interested. And I was like, email me. And he kind of dropped me a DM. I was like, listen, I already dropped your name to the guy before I even posted this. Because I knew, because he was posting every kind of couple of days, I knew he was in my subconscious that he was out there looking, and I know he's got a good reputation. So, bingo, there's your guy straight away. As soon as the guy called me and said, will you post it? I was like, try blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Because those were the 3 names of the 3 people who I constantly see posting really good content, who've got great background. So automatically, that's who I'm going to go to when I'm making recommendations.
Yeah.
And in this market where everybody's making recommendations, that's who you want to be. You want to be the guy or the gal that is remembered.
Because they've got that presence. And I think it was interesting when you said, I don't see it as building a brand. That's not what you're doing. You're not building a personal brand. You're just being present. You're
being
in
present.
The right place.
Yeah. There's nothing contrived about me doing what I do. It's become more routine, definitely. But am I trying to build David Brammer the brand? Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's what we were going to ask you.
That was our question.
Describe your brand, but we can't ask you now because you.
Well, no, you can. But I mean, like,
what's your brand then, David?
My brand is, I work in recruitment. I've done a lot of stuff. I've got a unique kind of style from a leadership and a written and spoken word kind of point of view, and I have an opinion on stuff. That's my brand. That's who I am. That's what I do. Did I intend when I first started writing content to build myself like a following? No. Last year, in the 6 months of last year, I posted 4 times, and my posts got something like 15,000 views in total in 6 months. In the last 6 months, I've got 500,000. That isn't by design. It's not because I want to build myself this big brand. I just want to be in people's conscious that if an opportunity does come up, that they know who I am and that I'm on the market. That's it. It's a really selfish endeavor, but whilst doing that and having that agenda, at the same time, if that content then benefits people, you wouldn't believe the amount of messages I've had from people saying, oh, thanks for putting up that post this morning. I needed to hear that. So a lot of it's quite encouraging. I tend to finish a lot of my posts and stuff with, don't worry, that right opportunity is just around the corner. Have a great day. Yeah, that kind of thing. And I will often get messages from people, like 5 or 10 messages after each post, just saying, I needed to hear that today. Thanks. And that's enough for me. I think
it's because it's real. You're saying almost from the heart. You're saying the stories and the experiences that people are actually going through.
Well, because I'm having the same ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I got ghosted too. Yeah, I've got a good CV and I've worked for a lot of big brands. And I've had big jobs, but I've been ghosted. I've had recruiters say, oh, I've got this job for you. Like, fantastic. Yeah, it looks great. Fantastic. 3 weeks later, nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get the same treatment as absolutely everybody else. The difference is, I think, once you're a head of TA or you're a TA director, when it comes to the agencies, they invest more of their time in you because they see you not only as a candidate for a next role, but when you're in that role and when you're an incumbent in that role, you're then a customer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors with that type of stuff. And you can see it with some people who just kind of routinely call you and kind of go, just checking in, what you got going on at the minute. Like, I'm not going to give you any company names. Do you know what I mean? What do you want me to do? Give you a kind of a full breakdown of where I'm interviewing at so you can pitch some candidates in? Yeah, no problem.
I think when we talked ahead of coming on the podcast, you mentioned, I think it sort of bleeds into that category nice about proactive and reactive hiring. Mm-hmm. So it'd be good to get your opinion, as you say, on like some of the good and bad practices that you're seeing and what your advice is.
So I think what I would start with is the difference between recruitment and TA, right? Because there is a fundamental difference, I believe, between the two. Recruitment is part of TA. Talent acquisition is about acquiring talent and the outreach to the talent market and understanding your kind of objectives and goals as a business, but it's much broader. Recruitment is the operational activity of making a hire. You've got a square peg that you need to find to go in a square hole. Or sometimes it might be circular, whatever, right?
A lot of pegs.
A lot of pegs, hexagonal, whatever. And I think it starts with that for me. So there are lots of companies out there who call what they do TA, but it's not, it's recruitment. They are subservient to a business. The business goes, I need these people, I need them in 4 weeks, go. That is reactive recruitment. If you're in TA and you embrace TA for the full life cycle of TA and what that is and what that means, it's very, very different. So you go to a company that doesn't have workforce planning, how is it possible for you to enable a real talent strategy for the next 2 to 3 years? You can't. You're only ever going to be in a reactive or responsive environment if you don't know what comes next. Good TA partners with a business, understands that in 12 months' time, you're implementing a new system. And that new system is going to require 30 people. And those 30 people will be on site for between 12 and 24 months or whatever. So you can then reverse process engineer what it looks like to make those hires. Rather than, in reality, what actually happens is the company keeps that to themselves. They then all of a sudden in a March say, by May, we need 30 engineers to build this new system. And then you're like, well, it takes 3 months to hire someone. So you're not going to have any run-off time or any run-up time. And that's what effective workforce planning kind of comes in for. But then you've also got the talent angle as well. So if I'm not close with the talent director around, okay, where are your risks? Who are your high potentials in teams? Who's on the internal kind of, mobility kind of space? Who is already a really accomplished finance manager who's going to be one of the next internal promotions to head of finance? If you've already got 5 finance analysts in one team and you need a 6th, what is the difference with that 6th? What do you need from the 6th that you don't already have in the 5? Right? That for me is the talent acquisition element, because you're trying to build an understanding rather than just fill an order. You go to a restaurant, you ask for a lasagna, you're going to get a lasagna, right? You go to a restaurant.
Well, you might get some garlic bread with it.
You might get a bit of garlic bread. You might even get a bit of parmesan on top, right?
Stop it.
I know. I did eat, luckily, before I came in. Like, my point is, it doesn't have to be prescriptive. You can talk about hiring all day long. That most companies don't proactively outreach to the market as much as they could or should, right? So
why?
Well, because advertising works for them, right? So I worked for one company, and I won't drop names because I don't think it would be fair, but I started with them and I got a couple of months worth of data, and it's from the November and the December. And I said, can you give me some data on the talent and where it's come from for the last, let's say, month, 2 months? And they went, okay, here you go. And they'd had 21,000 applications in 2 months. And I said, okay, so what's the split? And out of 21,000 applications, I said, how many of those were reached out to through LinkedIn, in-mails, whatever? 125.
Out of 21,000?
Out of 21,000.
Wow.
And I was like, right, okay, this is day 3.
Tell us who the company was,
No,
David.
absolutely. Absolutely not. The people that are there, if they actually listen to this podcast, will know immediately who I'm talking about. But it's. I think the difference is you can get 21,000 applicants for a series of jobs.
Yeah.
30% of the market are going to apply for stuff. 70% of the market are inactive. Right? So they might be passively looking for a job, and if a recruiter calls them about it, they might be open to it. But if they see a job that's just advertised, they might go, nah, I'm not that bothered.
Yeah.
Right? So you're only looking at 30% of a market. You're not looking at hiring the best person. You're hiring the best person out of who applied. That's the difference. So outreach is really important because it gives you access to 70% of a market, an inactive market, where actually, arguably, possibly, a lot of the best talent are sat.
Yeah.
Because you want to hire the best of the market, not the best of the applicants. So I think it starts with that type of stuff for me. When I first go into a company, I'm looking at what's the split. What's the split between what we do to outreach, what we get from where, and how we do that. And if you're in a tech space, that could be, you could be using GitHub, for example, or you might be using some other kind of hiring platform that's very specific for engineers or something like that. But your outreach, you can apply for any job. That's not a problem. Lots of companies will still post things routinely. But I think for specific markets, you're only ever going to get a certain type of candidate that comes through just from applications alone, right? And if you're on a Monster, for example, and you're posting, which there's nothing wrong with Monster. Monster's a wonderful platform. I would use a Monster or an Indeed or a Reed for more clerical, operational, more volume type hiring type roles, because I know that that is where the vast majority of their candidates are. Would I post a back-end Python engineer job on Monster? No, for the very good reason that those guys don't need to go on Monster to get a job, because they've got 18 agencies calling them every single week trying to pitch them another job. It's like qualified finance, right? Every company you ever work for, when you're trying to hire kind of financial accountants, whether it's finance managers or corporate managers, whatever it might be, they always look for the same thing. ACA or ACCA, first-time passers, Big Four background, year in audit, second role maybe in industry. Everybody's trying to tap that. Everybody's trying to tap that industry. But the agencies have got it cornered. So what on earth would be the point in posting that on Monster or Indeed? Because if you're one of the candidates that needs to go on Monster or Indeed, potentially, to find a job of that nature, that speaks volumes, right?
I think there's like technology now anyway that you can identify where would be the best place to post a particular kind of job, right?
Yeah, rather than just, like you say, posting out to the generic kind of job boards. It's more tailoring it. And also, I think tailoring the content, like to candidates or surfacing jobs. Like, you know, if we're searching on Google for certain things, then we can now kind of tailor and personalize the content that will show to them, which is tapping into that 70% of people that aren't actively applying.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't worked extensively, with the exception of Indeed, who I do rate quite highly. And I really like the team there, and I think they do good things, and I think they're really
Shout out to Indeed.
Well, I think they're much more interested in outcomes than other companies. A lot of companies want to sell you stuff, and then once they've sold it to you, they kind of walk away, right? Until the next time they want to sell you some stuff, right? My LinkedIn account manager, traditionally in most of the companies I've worked for, is really prevalent, really there, really in my inbox, in my face, on my phone for 2 or 3 months until that 3-year agreement is signed, and then I shall never see them again until 3 years' time, when the negotiation kind of comes back up, because they've got your money, right? I think that's the difference with Indeed. They're much more interested in the outcome and trying to tailor that for you and work with you, which is why I still work with them. But and I'm not sponsored, by the way, by Indeed in any shape or form. Not yet. Yeah, we'll see. But I think you've just got to put some. You've got to put some stuff out there, because I think it's relevant and it's healthy and it's good for your employer brand to be seen, to be out there, to be hiring from the market actively. But I think there's also some really bad practice out there from a recruiting point of view, which kind of goes, right. So actually one of my posts on LinkedIn that got a really good response was about a job that I'd seen that had been advertised that had 700 applications for this head of TA role, right? And I'd been approached by an agency for it, and I said, "Are you actually joking?" I actually said, and these were my words, and I'm not trying to sound like an arse, right? But I kind of said to this person on the phone, I was like, "Are you joking? Why are you calling me about that? They've had 700 apply clicks. There must be 200 different heads of TA in the UK right now that I could probably name who would be suitable for that job that are out of a job. Why are they coming to you?" And they were like, "Yeah, well, it was a bit of a routine kind of thing for them. They just need to be seen to be advertising it, but really they're just waiting to use us." Right. I was like, so 700 people are going to get pissed off and not get a response potentially, or just get an automated shitty response because you couldn't be asked.
Great way to burn your talent pool.
Christ. And think about it as well, right? So I've often worked for a lot of retail companies, e-com companies, that type of stuff. Every candidate's a customer. People forget that stuff, right? So Boots each year, when I was there, and forgive me if I get this stat wrong, Boots, but we used to traffic about 70,000 candidates, I think, for like their seasonal hiring for like stores and stuff for Christmas. And a lot of that was like students and stuff who were coming home from uni and they had a month off, so they'd come and they'd help, you know, on the perfume counter or whatever for a month before Christmas and get some cash. What a lot of companies neglect to do is to realise that they're alienating themselves from customers if those customers then just get the standardised thank you but no thank you. Because then they've got a choice of, right, well, I don't want to go to Boots anymore. Actually, I'll go Superdrug, or I'll go online and I'll go to Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
Because they will vote with their feet. And I've done it personally when I've gone to a company and I've had a really shitty experience. I've been like, whoa. No, I was a fan before.
Yeah.
I used to buy I buy quite a lot of very expensive clothing, which my wife hates. And I was a big fan of this brand, and I went to see them for their head of TA job. And I met the CPO. And my God, it was the most awkward and awful experience I've ever had in an interview. She was shocking.
Do you want to name the company?
No, I'm not going to name I won't name the company, but to say that, you know, this person was just egocentric to the absolute nth degree was unreal.
In the interview?
Really?
In the interview, yeah. Like, came in, gave me like 10 minutes and was just like, okay, so I'm going to leave you with this guy and he's just going to finish the interview. And I was like, oh my God. Not only am I not interested in this job anymore, irrespective of whether you're interested in me, but I will not be buying anything from you again. And I was spending a lot of money, right? So it has a big effect.
Yeah.
And this is where your advertising bit comes in, because in that instance of the 700 applications, what you should do, switch that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had been open for 2 months. And that 700 became 800, became 900. And you're just like, come on.
Jeez.
Like have some, it's about policy. Lots of companies don't have policies. If you have a policy that says we will publish our vacancies for 1 week, and if that then doesn't give us the yield that we need of candidates, we'll then publish again subsequently for another week. That's what policy does. It gives you some constraints, it gives you some parameters by which you operate. For companies without policy, they post a job, it gets 700 responses, it's still open on LinkedIn 2 weeks after they've hired the job. So every candidate that's subsequently coming in is not only foregone conclusion that they're not going to get the job, but it's also a foregone conclusion that they're going to get pissed off because they're not going to get communicated with, and they could feel incredibly qualified for that job and not get it. So I'm a big believer in policy when it comes to recruitment and advertising and that type of stuff. But again, that kind of goes back to the difference between recruitment and TA. Because in TA, if you're savvy and you've got a great CRM platform and you're working with a CRM to build talent pipelines based on company goals, workforce planning, all the information that you get given if you're a valued partner with the business, it's an entirely different thing.
I think the messaging, though, even in the CRM, or like when we're automating that, is got to, well, for me anyway, I feel like it would resonate more if it's like that. You catch them, that catchy kind of questions at the beginning, or the content, or if you're asking me to watch a video of the day in the life of, I think still a lot of the content that's being pushed out is the same. Hey, we've got these engineer roles.
Yeah.
Like, it's just boring still, isn't it?
Yeah. And honestly, for a lot of recruiters, like a recruiter from one of my previous companies posted a job yesterday on LinkedIn and did not use a single hashtag. Right, and they've got about 300 followers or whatever. You might as well go to your front door. Like literally go to your front door and say, hello, hello, I want an enterprise architect, anybody? Like the guy walks past with his like Datsun or something, like, no, not me, mate, thank you. But like if you're going to put up a post and share a job with some random average stock image of, you know, three business people in New York pointing at each other and looking out of a window, and it's just going to be just, here's our job, apply for it, and you've got no followers and you've not used any hashtags and you've not hashtagged the job or the industry or anything like that, what's the point? It's just poor practice. When I was back at TK Maxx, we had a CTO at the time called Andrew, and he was brilliant. Loved Andrew. I think he might still be at AS Watson now, which is part of Superdrug or whatever. And he said to me one day, he said, we're really struggling for this role. I said, well, I haven't got the network you've got. I said, so why don't you post it? He said, what do you mean? I said, you've got LinkedIn license, right? I said, you got LinkedIn profile. He goes, yeah. I said, well, then post the job. He said, me post it? I said, yes, you. And he posted it, and within 2 days we had 50 applicants.
Wow.
Nice.
No shit. Like, seriously, sometimes there's a misconception that recruitment is the TA team's job. Yes, it is as a facilitator, but ultimately hiring a job is always the job of the hiring manager, right? Recruitment is something that is owned by the hiring manager. It's facilitated and operated by a TA team or a recruitment team, but it's ultimately my job as a hiring manager to make sure that I get the right person in. I might not be pulling the strings. I might not be the one that actually posts it on the job board or, you know, does the outreach. But I can sure as hell go on LinkedIn and use my network and everybody that's following me to then say, I need an enterprise and you know, architect in my team. Hashtag enterprise architect, hashtag job, hashtag careers, hashtag whatever. And overnight, literally overnight, within like 2 days, we had like 50 applications for a job that we've been struggling for a month.
That's
a
a
fraction
really-
of the cost as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting like perspective, because you're so right. Everyone is always like, no, that's the recruiter's job. You go find the candidate.
And also to a job board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight to a job board, straight to the career site.
But that example was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So this isn't new stuff, right? See,
He nearly said new shit then, didn't
Well,
he?
there's been a few
We nearly
words
made
slipped
friends.
See,
in. There's a
I'm
few
relaxing.
swear words slipped in. It's all right.
There's a couple of little ones, but none of this is new. This is all should be standard practice stuff that your TA partner is doing with each hiring manager, right? If you are ahead of procurement, you are going to have more people in your LinkedIn connections who are in procurement, ex-colleagues, peers, network, whatever, than I am. I'm not in procurement, I'm in recruitment. I've got 16,000 followers or whatever it is on LinkedIn, which is still nothing compared to a Hung Lee or an Andrew McCaskill or whoever, but it's a relevant population because it's all pretty much HR and recruitment people. I don't just connect with anybody that's outside of our industry. I try and keep it as close as I can to that. So I might go as far as HR and like or a chief marketing officer or something like that, because obviously I can then help them potentially at some point, or they can help me. But like when I was first at Boots, I was immersed into the optometrist world, and I had hundreds of optom kind of contacts and stuff. And 2 days ago, I got a message from someone saying, "Oh, I'm starting up an optical chain. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "I'm not an optometrist."
But Specsavers need to know about it, don't they?
Yeah, and I was just like, did you even look at my profile? Like the amount of people that just don't do their research, right? Still, even though I put a post up about it like 2 months ago saying, with the greatest of respect, I left Ocado at the end of March. Please stop pitching me stuff. Please pay a little bit more attention and start looking at profiles before you just send people messages. Every week, still, "Hi David, seen what you're doing at Ocado. Have you?" Have you though? Because that's magical. Because I've not been there now for like 4 months.
Nobody else at Ocado's seen it.
No one else, yeah, gonna say. No one else has seen this wonderful work I'm doing. And if I am, I'm not getting paid for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people just need to pay a little bit more attention and just be a bit more diligent. Do some basic stuff really well and stop getting involved in all the crap that, that hangs and loiters around recruitment. So many recruiters are inefficient. They spend so much of their time on admin and interview organising and different tasks that they don't need to do. If they get more diligent with their hiring and their attraction processes, they've got less candidates to deal with, less admin, less interviews. It's not rocket science.
No, just stick to the
basics. It's really straightforward. Stick to the basics, but do them well. And use your hiring managers. Let them post stuff. Attract in different ways, and don't just rely on responses from job boards, because that's lazy.
Speaking of magic.
Just step off my soapbox now.
Just conscious of time.
Yeah. Speaking of magic, so I have a bit of a thing that I like to ask people on the podcast.
This is the closing component.
Oh, is this the closing question, is it?
David absolutely loves it.
Love this feature.
But if you could have a magic wand to cast on one thing throughout the TA community, the TA world, you could change or do something. Could be technology, I don't know, something within LinkedIn. What would it be? If you almost had one wish.
Christ. I could probably come up with 10 or none. I think it would be for people to see TA rather than recruitment, and think about TA rather than thinking about recruitment. Whatever you're thinking about recruitment, you're in an operational, responsive service environment. Whatever you're thinking about TA, and you're thinking about the bigger picture and longer term, and you have visibility and you've got decent partnership with the business and what's happening and what's going on from a talent perspective, from a goals perspective, from a strategy perspective, you can do your job better. So I guess if I could wave my wand at anything, this magical wand, it would be having people look at the big picture. Because I've experienced so much responsive, reactive TA, or recruitment rather, in my time. And it's a really simple transition to move from recruitment to TA, right? It doesn't take a lot. Work smarter rather than harder is my kind of wish. I wish that people would just work a bit smarter than harder and immerse themselves into it rather than being a glorified filing clerk, right? Something comes into this tray, you take it out of this tray, you put it in this tray. Is it right? No, goes in this tray. Is it right? Yeah, put it in that tray. There are systems that can automate that stuff now. I think if there was one wish, it would be for people to look at talent more holistically rather than just recruitment.
David.
I bet no one else has answered it like that, have they?
They haven't.
No. That was powerful.
Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been
Pleasure.
Very heartwarming, I think.
Yeah, thanks for making it.
Absolute pleasure. I'll look forward to the 40-minute walk back.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.